This is the Score to Follow podcast.
Welcome to the Score to Follow podcast, and it's our season review pod. It's a nice summer Saturday afternoon. The trees are looking great, the birds are singing. I have Dan Laundy in front of me. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
And I have Mark Hannells to my right. Hello, Mark.
Hello there.
And I am, of course, Neil Mundy. So,
Didn't know whether you were going to start off by talking about football or Springwatch.
I think, it's a glorious day. So, let's first of all give tribute to the day. And if I do digress into 5 minutes about talking about Sparrowhawks and Blue Tits, then so be it. But yeah, so season review time. The way this show we're going to work is we're all going to talk about our respective clubs for a few minutes each. We're all going to uninterrupted. Then at the end of our dialogue, the other two are going to ask questions or bring up talking points about the season just gone. And if we do have time at the end, we'll also do a more general review of the Premier League season as a whole. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to review Liverpool's season. So I'm going to get straight into it. So I'm sort of there's very much an approach, gentlemen, here of your thoughts on whatever way you want to do it. It's a bit more free form, less structured this one. Having said that, I'm going to start at the start. So it was actually back in August. It was a blistering start for Liverpool. Did really well. Obviously won Arsenal in the opening game. A bit of a disappointment then losing to Burnley, but after that, September and October were really good times. It's quite easy to forget now because it feels so long ago, but they were dispatching the likes of Hull, Watford, scoring 5 and 6, beat Palace away 4-2, and they were playing some really quite exhilarating stuff. It's again, like I say, because it's a while ago, you sort of forget, but it was champagne stuff at the beginning, and it was sort of football I hadn't seen in a long time. Properly opening up defences, obviously. Likes of Sadio Mane was a really good addition for us, a really pacey player, and just gave us that extra dimension to open up teams. But also in a more subtle way, Gini Wijnaldum has been a good addition as well. Matip's done well, and all three of those summer signings were to the fore at the beginning. The first part of the season, we were top of the league in November. Everything was looking really good, and we were even mentioning the dreaded T word title. And then the winter was okay to start with. We were still plugging along, getting some decent results. Obviously lost the 4-3 at Bournemouth, which is a bit of a mad game, but I think in those games, that sometimes when your manager's Jurgen Klopp and he wants you to play the sort of helter-skelter football that he wants you to play, those results occasionally happen. But after that, we went on a good run, beating like some Middlesbrough, Stoke, Everton, City on New Year's Eve, and of course that's January is, that's still a good run of form, while perhaps not quite as sparkling football. January is where it gets a bit trickier. We lost Mane to the African nations, and obviously he's an important player for us. We dropped points. Draws with United and Chelsea aren't too bad in January, but a draw away at Sunderland and a defeat at home to Swansea is harder to swallow. And just lost a bit of rhythm. I think it was hard for the players for a while. I also went out of the League Cup, got to the semi-finals at that point, but were beaten by Southampton over 2 legs, and out of the FA Cup to Wolves. So that was quite hard, quite a hard going stretch of games. There was a lot of games in a short space of time. Probably had, as well as Mane's absence, Coutinho was out, Lallana was out. So we probably missed a few players. And perhaps the squad depth wasn't quite what it should be coming in. Some minor criticisms of the manager, saying that he could have signed a player in January. Perhaps he could have. But it's a difficult one because I can see his side of it as well. Perhaps you don't want to just sign a player for the sake of signing a player. He did that last season with Steven Corker and didn't know what to do with him. So there is that. I think the second half of the season, certainly we get into February, we do a little bit better, but it's a dispiriting defeat at Leicester. But after that, it's mainly good. But it was a different kind of good. There was some good football played in patches against Arsenal and Spurs at home, but there was sort of more grinding out results the second half of the season, which actually pleased me a lot. You're winning away at winning at home against Burnley at first, which sounds silly, but sort of fixture we were struggling in. And then you're beating Stoke, West Brom and Watford away. All of those games in the run-in, tricky-looking games, and they went away and won them all. And they weren't particularly sparkling performances, but it's nice to see that you can grind out a result, do that, and if you can marry that sort of second half of the season with the first half of the season, then you've got the complete package. So, and I think as well, the players had obviously realised the title had gone by the point of sort of late February, so picking themselves up and getting back into the battle for fourth. And it's very easy once you realise your primary objective has gone by the wayside to sort of fall away completely. But I think the players and Klopp deserve credit for getting back on the horse and making sure that they finished well and finished to get what was the minimum target of the fourth place and the qualification round for Champions League, which they obviously secured, doing quite well in the last 4 games as well. As much has been made about a slightly dodgy defence, which has been dodgy this season. Last 4 games of the campaign were 1-3 lost, 1-3 drew, 1 lost, none, 8 scored, none conceded. So you couldn't fault the defence at that particular point, and that was when we needed them to step up, and they did, and we started scoring goals again. So yeah, I have to say, pretty pleased on the whole with the way the campaign's gone. It was certainly a target at the beginning of the season to qualify for the Champions League, and they've got into that qualification round. Also going from 4th to 8th is very pleasing, and it's quite nice to have a gradual step as well, because quite often we sort of, you've seen in the past with the Rodgers side, and to agree with Rafa's last team, great team, that we sort of sprung from quite low down to suddenly finish second and do really well, which is great. But then the following season we sort of almost reset, and obviously that could happen next season. We know that it depends on the summer and everything else, but it feels less likely this time, because this is more of a gradual sort of climb. It doesn't feel like we've peaked and then are going to fall back down. It feels more like this is a building and this block, and this is a step towards what we want to do. So very positive, I think, on the whole. I mean, if you're going to give it, if you're going to go down the route of giving it numbers, it's probably perhaps a 7, 8 out of 10 season. Obviously it'd be nice to win a trophy as well. That didn't happen this season, but that we'll be in more competitions next year, whatever way you look at it. Even if the qualifier goes tits up, we'll still be in the Europa. So yeah, overall pretty pleased with the way things have gone. There are obviously minor things, churning away in the background, like an Emre Can contract situation or stuff like that, but there's no major big things happening that makes me feel like the squad is not united or pulling in the same direction or playing for the manager. Everyone seems on board with the project. I know that's a terrible word to use around football teams these days, but everyone seems well on board with it, and looking forward to next season. Well, looking forward to the summer to see who we sign before that, but definitely looking forward to next season with a bit of hope. And it's very, very good to get into that 4th spot. So that's probably my take on. Well, that is my take. Probably about it. That's my take on the season, gents. Feel free to ask or bring up any points.
Well, signing twice.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it. Wijnaldum had a good season.
Yep.
I'm not sure of Klopp's record on signings generally, so I think Wijnaldum was quite important, especially towards the end of the season. He seemed to step up when other players perhaps didn't. I don't know. It's difficult because of the competition you're up against, and Klopp's only sort of early on into his Liverpool career. But is snatching 4th or just about keeping hold of 4th, is that success then? Is that now what Liverpool aim to achieve at this stage? Is that enough?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily enough. I would say that everyone. I wouldn't have thought that Klopp or anyone at the club would say, we're not having a bus parade. Put it that way. I think it's just a building block at this stage. I think if you, I don't want to put words in the manager's mouth, but I think if you asked him, would you say what adjective would you use to describe the season? Your take on it, he would say satisfied. I would say nothing more. You can't be. People talk about the fourth thing all the time and go over the top on it either way. But you can't be overjoyed at finishing in a position or just reaching a minimum target, which is what it is.
Well, you say that because a lot of fans now and the media as well almost portray fourth place or third place as a trophy. In the history books, you don't have a trophy, but it's sort of perceived now that third and fourth is just as important to attain as, say, winning the League Cup or the FA Cup. So that's why I say I wonder if fourth does qualify as enough at the moment, because the Champions League now will be at Anfield next season. It's more revenue. You might be able to entice new sort of better quality of players. Whereas winning the FA Cup, for example, fantastic day out, and it's something I wish we could have done. But ultimately, does it get you to that next step to where you want to get to? I don't know.
I think it's all about the cycle it gets you into. So, for example, under Benitez, Liverpool always in the Champions League, and then that one year they weren't. And then it suddenly became really hard to get back into it. And they tried loads of things, spending lots of money, different managers, and it was so difficult. Even last season when you could have argued that nearly all of the big clubs messed up. Liverpool were amongst those big clubs and didn't come anywhere near the Champions League places. So I think the club it gets you into, okay, you're still not going to be making money like the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, but it elevates you into that higher place. Like you said, transfers wise, probably gets you, people will come to play Champions League. Although I think that sometimes is I think that's an overhyped factor.
And being based in the north doesn't help out sometimes. There's no disrespect, but it's well known that players tend to want to gravitate towards London. Maybe
yeah, that's
Manchester.
true. Yeah, that's true to a degree, but I think a lot. I think, this is perhaps a slight tangent point, but I think like a lot of what you hear is that players seem to now, perhaps this is in the last couple of years, and it's probably a topic for a separate pod, but I think players want to play for a manager. Like you're hearing this, we may not sign Virgil van Dijk. There's a lot going around either way. City or Chelsea could step in, but a lot of the talk seems to be that he wants to play for Klopp. And rather than Champions League football, which I'm sure helps. Don't get me wrong, but it seems to me that the manager is a bit more of a big deal now. I wouldn't be surprised to see players go to any one of our three clubs this summer because of the manager. I know Wenger at Arsenal is a bit of a hot topic, so to speak, but he still has a brilliant reputation in the game, and people want to play for him. Pochettino is a really good young coach who's building his reputation, and people are hearing of him. You're getting Barcelona links and all this sort of thing now. So I think that's actually the biggest thing. But of course, it's really nice to have that carrot dangled in there of Champions League football.
Yeah, I think that for a Liverpool season, you have to call it a progression, because obviously from 8th and then obviously getting in the Champions League. I know you said about Champions League could be treated as an unofficial trophy, but it is a big deal because, like you say, you can better players will want to come to you if you're playing in the Champions League. All the top players want to play in the Champions League.
That's all you hear.
Yeah, it is all you hear. So I think that it is a big deal if you finish 4th in the Premier League, where if you've gone from let's say somewhere like 8th and then you've gone and finished 4th, I think that you can call that a success.
Yeah, and I suppose as well that we haven't mentioned, which we will touch on with all of our clubs, is that the points tally as well is important, because Liverpool got 76 points. I think they've only bettered that twice in the last 10 seasons. Arsenal, for all the talk of them finishing 5th and outside of the Champions League places, 4 more points than last season.
Yeah, and didn't get in the top 4.
So, it's so sometimes you almost have to. Chelsea have won the league here with 93 points, and I think last season Leicester had something like 77.
I can't remember exactly.
It was around that number. I probably should have done the research beforehand, but so everyone's up their game, and correspondingly, Spurs have got posted I think at least 10 points on last year. So everyone's up their game correspondingly, and you've got to go with it. And I think it was 60 we got last season, 76 this. So that's 16 points. That's 5 wins and a draw more. So that's pretty good. I think you've got to look on that, as you say, as a progression.
So you're satisfied then that you're excited with things to come.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, no one knows what the next season will bring, and it could all. Everyone knows it could all go badly wrong. It has done before, but
I think it's difficult for our clubs, particularly, and obviously we'll move on to mine and Mark shortly. But I think budget restrictions in place. Spurs certainly have a budget restriction, both with contracts and what they can afford because of the new stadium, and Liverpool, I know, don't have the finances of a United, a Chelsea, or perhaps an Arsenal. So I don't know how you year on year compete with those. I think that's why we always have got. I think it is almost more of a success for Liverpool and Spurs, unfortunately, to be top 4.
Yeah.
Because Arsenal missing out this year, that's what you're competing against, and people argue Arsenal don't spend the money. But for us to get there, it is an achievement, because to finish ahead of a City or an Arsenal is.
I sort of, I agree. I sort of didn't want to say this because I didn't want to be too harsh to Mark, but knocking Arsenal out is actually massive in terms of them being a competitor, and then they'll now obviously it depends. It remains to be seen. If they get back in after a season, then it's not too much lost for Arsenal. But if they stayed out for a couple of seasons, from experience, I know how tough that can then be to get back into that cycle.
United would say the same, I would.
Yeah. Had they not obviously won the Europa?
Well, I say you see obviously United, they dropped out of Europe. Obviously Chelsea last season dropped out of Europe altogether and then won the league this season.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be interesting in how we respond, because all the the so-called big teams that have had a bad season, fallen out of Europe, and then have reacted, and the next season they're back in, and that's what we need to do. That's
I know we'll touch on it. I know we'll touch on it when you talk about Arsenal, but to me, Arsenal will be a team to watch next year. But we'll touch on that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I suppose I should move on to Spurs.
Yeah. If you guys have got nothing more to quiz me on about Liverpool, then I'm happy to draw a line under that.
I've got one other thing actually.
Okay.
So
we're not making this up on air, honestly.
Just come to me. But the goalkeeping situation. We touched on it briefly before, and obviously Mignolet. Is he still Belgium's number 1? I'm not sure.
Courtois.
It's Courtois, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So Mignolet, you bought in Karius last summer.
Mm-hmm.
No one really knew whether he was anticipated to be number 1, because he did step in briefly, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he was obviously taken out again for his own benefit. At the time, Mignolet was offered given a new contract. So there's a lot of talk that Liverpool will bring in a high-profile goalkeeper. Is that necessary? What was the point in signing Karius and then adding Mignolet on a new contract if you were going to then look for a keeper? Because I know Klopp said that he certainly saw Mignolet and Karius as all he needed. Now, I'm not. Obviously, the press would have you believe otherwise.
I don't think I believe him. I think Klopp's quite upfront when it comes to things like that, and I honestly don't. I mean, you can never say never with transfers, and we could be sat here on 31st of August as always with football looking stupid, but I don't think he'll bring in another goalkeeper. And I think just to talk about Karius briefly, I think he's been a bit unlucky, because I'm not saying he would now be a world beater, but I think he was due to start the season as number 1, looked very confident, then broke his hand, and I think that's quite a big deal for a goalkeeper.
No, fair enough.
And I didn't really see him before he had the injury. I saw him after, but people seem to say that he looked very different, understandably as you would be, a lot less confident. I think it may have taken him time to grow back in his confidence. I think. And this again isn't me saying he's going to turn into Ray Clements and win Golden Gloves for 10 years, but I think Klopp still has confidence that he will come good. And I think, and actually a word for Mignolet.
Keepers don't till they're in their mid to late 20s.
Well, it's a longer career for a keeper, isn't it? it's a lot of a longer year. Yeah, it's a long career, and they get experience. I mean, look at Buffon, still looking brilliant. But just a word for Mignolet as well. Again, you can't fault the guy. I mean, he has a lot of the copping kittens sometimes, but this season he's actually done pretty well, and he seems to react really well for being dropped. I mean, he got dropped for Brad Jones once, who literally dived out of the way of the ball, and he come back stronger, and he's done it again. He's actually, bar one bad error hole, which keepers do. All keepers make mistakes.
Yeah,
he's actually looked really solid for the first time, pretty confident, and he seems to have his punching sort of thing sorted out now. Where I think a lot of the time with him, it was indecision. You didn't know whether he's going to come for a ball or not. If you know a goalkeeper's going to come for a ball and he misses it, then it's on him. But you know he's going to come. It's the uncertainty, I think, in the defence a lot of the time but he seems to have a handle on that now, and he's properly coming for balls. He's properly punching them. He's looking confident. I think he's even sort of barking instructions. I mean, we have seen this before, whether he'll reset to sort of factory settings, go away, and then look a bit weaker. It could happen, but I'm actually not too worried about the goalkeepers at the moment. I think we've got decent options there. Let's see what next season brings. I hope to see Karius kick on at some point, and I think I think we could still see him do well. So I don't think they'll go for another keeper. Basically, that's a very long-winded answer, but
I think Karius was really brought in for kind of now because Mignolet was making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But also he's a young goalkeeper. He could be our number one for years. And then, like you say, unfortunately, even before he played a game for you, he broke his hand. A young keeper coming into a new club, and then that happening, it's not gonna do him any good at all. But yeah, like I think Karius coming in, it's been good for Mignolet.
Yeah, I think so.
And obviously Karius come in. Karius then made a couple of mistakes. Mignolet came back in and hasn't really looked back apart from obviously like the whole game he made that. But apart from that, I can't think of any really high-profile mistakes he's made all season. He's kept his number one spot all season, hasn't he? So
yeah, no, he's done well, and I think like I say, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because you wouldn't say either of them are outstanding goalkeepers, but my hope is that Karius will develop into certainly a very good goalkeeper, and Mignolet at the moment has number one shirt, and you can't begrudge him that. I've been critical of him in the past, but this season he's been nearly faultless, to be honest. So well done him.
One other thing that I don't want to say about Liverpool is I think they've been pretty unlucky in the fact that they've got fourth place, but obviously first of all you lost Mane for the African Cup of Nations, and then obviously you lost him again for a big period for injury, and you still got into the top four. So I think next season, if he's going to be important for you, because you saw how important he was for you when he has been playing, and God knows what would have happened if you had him available for the whole season.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, like I said before, he adds a different dimension, and I mean, I know we're going to talk about transfer rumours probably in a different show, but backing him up is getting somebody else who's pacey as well, which they're looking to. Obviously, we know they're looking to do is important, I think. So do you want to go on to Spurs?
Yeah, let's talk
about Spurs, Dan.
So I started the season with a lot of trepidation. Third last season was a big deal. I thought it showed a real step, a real improvement, because previously it was 4th or 5th, and we would always fall one side of that line, generally 5th, obviously. To finish third it felt good to be there comfortably. But starting the new season, there was no real improvement in the squad. They bought Wanyama, who obviously steps up. He was a really quality player for Spurs this season, really important. And you struggled originally to see where he might fit in, because they had Dyer and Dembele in there, and you didn't think you'd want to upset that. So I didn't know how that would work out. And then they brought in Janssen as cover for Kane. Inexperienced, had only played one season of top flight football. So the transfers at the start of the season, and the idea of living up to last season, having come so close and then dropping away right at the end for Arsenal to come in and finish second. you kind of wondered mentally as well how the younger players would be able to perform this year. And they surprised me pretty well, because I don't think Spurs were beaten until November, late November, when they went to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And even that, Spurs probably dominated the game during the first half and were unfortunate. I think the only defeat we suffered prior to that was a second string League Cup defeat at Liverpool. And again, on the night, Liverpool's youngsters were probably slightly better than our youngsters. I don't remember it being much in it. Mm-hmm. You probably remember that game as well as I do. Mm-hmm. So to finish second like we have is a real improvement. I know it's only one place in the table, but to push Chelsea relatively close in a season where Chelsea went 12 straight wins or something along them lines. Yeah. I think any other season Spurs' tally would have almost sealed them the title. I think there's only one or two over the last 20 years where it wouldn't have. So I think that tells you where Spurs were at this year. I mean, they were essentially champions of a different season. Sounds daft because it doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it gives you an indication of where this team suddenly is at. Any other year it would have also been competing for the Premier League title, and if you'd have told me that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd have laughed at you, because it was just something you could never see how the club, with our finances as we touched on before, you could never see how the club could develop into a team that would be able to compete with a Manchester City, with a Chelsea. So it shows you what can be done. Perhaps Leicester last year, a freak as it was, perhaps gave people an idea that you can, if you get a good team together, you can compete with others. I think it is reliant on the others not performing so well, so perhaps Spurs, I don't want to take credit away, but obviously City, first year under Guardiola, weren't quite at it at times. Obviously Arsenal had a poor year. United still haven't really recovered from Ferguson. But that aside, I think Spurs were pretty strong. They've got the best fullbacks in the league, I would argue. They're not great defensively, particularly Kyle Walker. But overall, I think if you look through the league, I can't see a better set of fullbacks. The centre halves look solid throughout. Obviously, they formed a partnership many years ago at Ajax, and they've rekindled that at Spurs. I think it was the best defence in the league. Lloris only finished one result behind the Golden Glove, I think, of Courtois. Yeah, so, you know, the famous line is that whenever United played Spurs, Ferguson would go into the dressing room and simply say, "Lads, it's Spurs," and the expectation would be that we'd fold. So for Spurs to have that many clean sheets and to be that difficult to score against, again, major improvement on a decade ago. You look into the midfield, I touched on Dembele and Dyer. Didn't see how Wanyama could get into that side. Obviously adopting a back three and Dyer stepping back is how they've managed to include them. But he was a very good addition. Really, really powerful in the big games. Seem to remember him, sorry Mark, particularly against Arsenal in the last North London derby a few weeks back. He was just immense, unplayable in there. You move forward in the team, you kind of thought Harry Kane, I think in total this season, was out for 11 weeks with various injuries. And if you'd have said that at the start of the season, I'm sure many pundits would have said, well, Spurs will struggle to score goals, you know, they'll be down the league. And I can understand why you'd say that. But obviously, Dele Alli, 20 plus goals again this season. Son really chipped in. I think he might have scored up near 20 odd goals as well. Then you've got people like Christian Eriksen sort of chipping in now and again. It's very difficult to pick a hole in the lineup and the performances of any of that team. Obviously, Harry Kane finished Golden Boot again. You know, for a one-season wonder, that's now a three-season wonder. So I hope people now give him the credit he deserves. I know he put something on Twitter about that, and fair play to him. It helped, obviously, having those two fixtures at the end of the season where Spurs kind of wiped the floor with Leicester and Hull for him to be able to nick it. But even so, that level of confidence to score 4 goals at Leicester and then 3 at Hull, back-to-back, I think the key thing for Spurs really is going to be keeping some of these players. There's a lot of talk that both fullbacks are wanted. You know, there's talk that City want Kyle Walker and that United want Danny Rose. I think it's a bit like what you said with Liverpool. I think a lot of Spurs players have bought into the project. They love Pochettino. I think the only thing that could take them away is, I think Danny Rose mentioned it the other week, is the prospect of Spurs only ever being a nearly club. getting close but never quite getting over the line. And that's something I think we witnessed this year again, because the FA Cup semi-final, probably the better team on the day against Chelsea again, overall. I mean, Chelsea won and you can't take that away. But I think if you watch that game back, Spurs dominated the ball, played the better football, somehow leaked 4 goals. No idea how. And then obviously with the title again, ran it close like last season, but couldn't quite get over the line. So there's questions to be asked about how the club improves on that. I don't know whether that just comes with time. That's something I'd be concerned about. And next year, particularly the year at Wembley, I don't know how they transfer the way they play at White Hart Lane to Wembley. Much bigger pitch. Harry Kane doesn't tend to be able to maintain a level on that pitch. Pressing on a pitch of that size is difficult, and so playing the way we play will become more difficult. It certainly caught us out in Europe last year. That's a major area Spurs need to improve on. That was obviously the big disappointment of the year. Sort of out of the Champions League early, and then whether it was an appetite thing or not, I don't know. But then in the Europa League, similarly, just didn't perform. Or maybe they took it for granted that they would get through that tie. I don't know. But obviously didn't perform in the Europa League. Obviously the big indicator there is that it was all at Wembley. I think there was one win against, was it CSKA? I think Spurs beat them at Wembley. But otherwise very difficult, and you have to hope that they adjust. But my sort of biggest question next year is going to be how they improve on the starting 11, because obviously I've just been through them, and you can't see a glaring hole. You can't see where there's an obvious improvement to be made. Best defence in the league, arguably the most consistent striker in the league, it would seem. Great support. I don't know where you improve on that side, so that's probably my biggest concern as a fan moving forward. There's a good mentality in the squad. I think it's probably indicated by being 2-0 down at City. We were dreadful that day and still managed to get a point. I think we watched it out in a pub somewhere. I can't remember if you guys... there was a Hugo Lloris error. I think he was a bit unlucky with that, because I think it come off the guy's shoulder. Yeah. So, but yeah, to put a point back from that when we were dreadful on the day, and also pulling a result in at Swansea, the 3-1 win, 1-0 down with 5 minutes to go. There's obviously a great belief and mentality in that side, and again you worry next year that can that be transferred, because that's 2 years running now that they've gone close. I'm not really sure. I mean, the season you have to, for Spurs, again, like I say, financially, you look at the club where it's got to, you can only give them an A in terms of their overall score report. It's been a fantastic year without winning a trophy or without winning anything, and that's where people will continue to ask questions, is can this group take it to the next step? And that's the thing. I don't know if this 11 can, but if they can't, how do you improve this 11? And they're the biggest questions for me. So if you've got anything about Spurs questions you want to ask, gents?
I would say that on your question, say can this group of players get better? I would say yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got a young group of players there. Last season, I think that obviously you took Leicester pretty close, just and then obviously to fall away at the end. But I think that was more to do with inexperience than that, being like for challenging for the title. I think it was just more inexperience, and I expected Tottenham to sustain how the most of that season, to do it again this season, which they have done. And really, I don't really know what else they could have done. I think Chelsea were just too good this year.
I think that's true. I think, like I say, most other years Spurs would have won the title.
Yeah.
And I can't, you can't criticise the players, I don't think, for where they got to. I mean, people will point to that West Ham game again. Mm-hmm. They'll say it's similar to last year where Spurs only got that draw against West Brom. Yeah. Mentally, were they not at it? It was strange that night. They didn't seem
it was
up for the game, but perhaps they already felt it had gone again. It's a bit like you said with Liverpool. Now, once that objective's gone, or nearly gone, I suppose the only trouble is it would have got Spurs within a point. Yeah. And people will say, well, had they put the pressure on that much, would Chelsea have buckled? I don't think so, but it's strange that night of all nights,
It's 93 points though. I keep coming back to that. I mean, I think that's only been betted once by Chelsea, 95. So it's quite hard to go, and you can look at places where you could have done better. My Spurs thing, and this is you've got to call it a minor criticism because, like you said, that this group of players have done exceptionally well. And it's a hard thing to criticise a team for. But if there is something, you mentioned the cup semi-final against Chelsea. I mean, Spurs went away to Manchester United, Liverpool and Chelsea and lost all those games.
True.
Some unluckily, I think they outplayed Chelsea. The United game was a bit here and there, really. But perhaps next season, and this is real kind of, nitpicking, perhaps you would be looking to at least get a draw in one or two of those games. I mean, Spurs beat both Chelsea and United at home.
I was going to say, conversely, at
comfortably.
home, they sort of were comfortable turning anybody over.
Exactly.
With the exception of Liverpool, who seems to have a bit of a head sign over Spurs. And that's, like I say, that's one of my biggest concerns about going to Wembley next year. Is one thing I didn't touch on in sort of my discussion there was obviously Spurs were unbeaten at White Hart Lane all season. That's not easy. I think it's a fitting tribute to the ground. As a fan, I'm quite sad to see it go. I've been looking at the live cams all week. Most of the ground's already been demolished. It's quite sad to see. I know it's progress, and obviously I look forward to the following season with excitement to see what that's going to be like. I will miss White Hart Lane. I think there was something. It was one of the special grounds, I think, and I think most neutral fans would admit that the atmosphere at White Hart Lane, particularly night games, was always good. I think it's the closeness to the pitch. People talk about Loftus Road. I don't think it created anything like what
West
White
Ham
Hart Lane
is,
does.
I think, quite a good analogy with that.
Upton Park.
I think they had that. I think Wembley thing does interest me. I mean, you've got the obvious precedent. I mean, I suppose it's a very basic point to make, but I suppose the only thing you could say is that it's not a shock to Spurs to know that they're going to be playing at Wembley. They've done it this season. I mean, it is hard, but you like to think that they'll have planned for that. You like to think that the manager, like you said, knows about the pressing. He knows that won't be as easy at Wembley, so perhaps they'll adopt a slightly different style of play. Perhaps they'll make a workaround for that. I don't know what that is.
I think it's key for the wing backs to stay.
Yeah.
They're the only pace in the side. I think if you're going to play at Wembley, it's key to get Rose and Walker forward as much as possible. Open teams up.
At Wembley, as I say, it's a lot more pitch for them to run into as well. So
I think last season on transfers, obviously Sissoko and Janssen. Sissoko particularly was awful, but
it was a strange one.
Always was a balmy move, isn't there? Yeah. Spurs have done really quite sensible business, mostly.
I think it was a desperate move. They needed an extra body. They wanted some strength and pace in midfield. He wasn't quite the right player mentally. I don't think he's good enough to be a top player. But
no, I don't.
The reason I bring transfers up is obviously Janssen was brought in, and he's very similar to Kane, I think, in certain attributes. Not everywhere by any means, but he's similar. Certainly with his pace. So he also will probably struggle at Wembley next year to get the chances. I think one key area that if you talk about improving Spurs is there's going to be days where Kane is going to get, found out. He is going to find it difficult at Wembley. I think Spurs have to find somebody who can get in behind. A striker, you can put the ball through the gap and he can race on. And that's something we don't have, and I think that's a gap. That's something that when games are tight and you just need to hoik the ball forward and get in behind, like a Sturridge perhaps. Perhaps not so greedy, but somebody like a Sturridge you can get in behind and you're confident they're going to finish. I think that's where Mane was so good for Liverpool at times this season.
I think that in a way you kind of have been trying to do that, but the players you've been bringing in are young players. So, like for example, Clinton Ng, couple of seasons ago, obviously that didn't really work out, and then you brought in Kudu this season, who another that's promising, full of pace, but still young. You need really somebody that's...
Danny Rose touched on in an interview the other week. He said that Spurs don't have the finances again of the big clubs, and so if they want to sign players who can make a difference, they have to find unpolished diamonds and bring them through, like Dele Alli. Everyone knew, everyone in football seemed to know who he was or what he was about, but
you're still taking a gamble on it.
Rather than bringing in somebody established, like you say, who is a superstar. and can get thrown straight into the mix. Not that always guarantees you success, but
well, Dele Alli, you obviously it was a gamble that's really paid off. 5 million, and
it's worth 10 times that now.
Yeah,
but, I mean, you look at Mbappe, for example. Could be a one-season wonder.
Yeah.
From what I've seen of him, looks very handy. He's very cool, great finish.
Still only 18 though.
Reminds me of Henry, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't like to make comparisons. We've said before. If Spurs had that sort of money, I think he'd be ideal. He's young, great finish, can get in behind. It's what Spurs don't have. But Spurs also don't have 80 million to blow on one player.
Do you think Harry Kane, as good as he is sort of a bit of a problem in a way because Pochettino loves this one striker system with Harry Kane, so it's then quite hard to then go, well, we'll get this, we'll get this quick lad in, but he's not going to play.
Yeah,
he's going to be able. Okay, Kane is going to get injured, but if Kane isn't injured, there's nobody forcing Kane out of the team. Quite rightly.
It's difficult.
It's difficult to. You end up with somebody like Janssen. It's a bit like, I always make the comparison. He does really remind me of Benitez because, and weirdly, Benitez had a really good home record and one season finished second with 86 points. So it's getting a bit strange. But I always make the comparison that we had Fernando Torres in a one-striker system, and then in fact he had a bit of a relationship with Gerrard like Dele Alli and Kane do. But then the second striker was David Ngo. So you've got that drop-off. And I think you're always going to have that because you're not going to have an Mbappe come, even if you did have the money, you're not going to have Mbappe come to then be like, well, I'm going to be playing second string and I'm only going to get the League Cup games.
Which is why we almost need to buy a player like what Everton did earlier in the season when they bought Lookman from Charlton.
Yeah.
Somebody who knows he's taken a step up, knows he's only going to, for the first couple of years, he's only going to get fleeting appearances, but occasionally might make a difference. I mean, once Lookman scored... Did he score on his debut against City?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And I don't think I heard of him for the rest of the season. I don't know if he didn't play or just didn't score.
But he was in and out. I think he was mostly on the bench.
And that's the thing. I think that's what you have to accept.
But it's Ben him in. He's come from Charlton League One.
I think so.
Yeah, Charlton League. So he's come from League One, 19 years of age. You've got to bed him in, but scoring your debut, then you sort of put pressure on yourself. But I think that's what Everton are doing, just bedding him in. But
it seemed a sensible bit of business.
I suppose to close out on Spurs, it's going to be a case of improving the squad, and there's no disrespect to some of the players we've got, but you mentioned like Nkudu and Janssen, Sissoko. They're probably not going to come on and change the game for you. Janssen's got something about him. I don't know if it's enough. I've seen enough in him that I think he can be a success. Whether that will be at Spurs or not, I don't know. It depends if he wants another season of playing second string. And kind of getting fragmented chances. And then you look at the others, like you say, were brought in. Nkudu, again, occasionally you think, well, he might be okay, but is he going to be better suited to a mid-table club? Sissoko, obviously, I think he'll probably be bombed out this summer. He's already making noises that he doesn't really get what he wants, and Pochettino. So I think the key thing for Spurs will be adapting to Wembley and making squad purchases that when things are getting a bit difficult, you've got players that can change the game, because at the moment, you look at Chelsea, if Chelsea are struggling, they take off Matic, they bring on Fabregas. They take off Costa, they bring on Pedro or Willian or Batshuayi, and they've just got players on the bench that other teams couldn't afford to have on the bench.
Batshuayi costs 35 million, barely plays, and then scores the goal that wins them the league.
Precisely. Whereas if Spurs were at West Brom and they had to make a change and they brought Janssen on for Kane, could you, I mean, I'm not saying you could expect Batshuayi to have done that, but would you have the faith that bringing Janssen on would seal you the league? I don't know that you would. And so that's the big difference. And with City, they've already made improvements, haven't they? They're signing Ederson from Benfica. They've signed Bernardo Silva, who's one of my favourite youngsters coming through. And it's barely a week since the end of the season.
Got stuff done early, haven't they?
So that's where Spurs are going to have to struggle and compete. And so, I mean, it looks positive. If you'd have told me where we'd be, like I say, 5-10 years ago, I never would have believed you, because I couldn't see how that transformation could happen. 5th and 4th at the time were fantastic achievements. So I'm very pleased, as you are. I can't argue. I'd like a trophy. I would have loved to have won the FA Cup. I think I mentioned that on the pod before. Mm-hmm. It may not have much value to people, but I still really like the FA Cup. I'm annoyed that they won it, and I suppose that's a good way to hand off to Mark Annals.
Yeah.
This disgusting bunch of Miscreants.
Sorry, God.
Oh.
You should just be happy that you finished above us.
I am very happy, and by
That's a
considerable amount of
trophy,
points.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the equivalent is of St Sosringham's Day, but that's what we've got this year.
Yeah. Hopefully it's just for the 1 year. Right. Okay. I went into this season quite confident actually, because I thought we bought quite well in the fact that we still needed another defender who we signed, Mustafi. We needed a little bit of still in midfield, because I think we were just getting bullied in midfield by other teams, and then we brought in Xhaka, who seems like quite a strong midfielder, but obviously could pass the ball as well. And then we brought in another striker, Lucas Perez. So I thought we signed people in positions that we needed. Unfortunately, with regards to the defence though, we signed Mustafi way too late, and then of course when we went to the season, Mustafi wasn't signed. Gabriel was injured. Mertesacker was injured.
Yeah.
Koscielny was injured. So we went actually into the first game of the season with a centre-back pairing of Rob Holding, who we also signed, but obviously a 20-year-old from Bolton, and Callum Chambers.
Yeah.
Which to then obviously play against a big club like Liverpool wasn't ideal. And we all saw what happened. I know in the end it looked like a tight game, 4-3 in the end, but really Liverpool just tore us apart. But after that, we did all right until sort of mid-December. We were doing all right with regards to our performances and results, and then we played Everton, went 1-0 up. They equalised, and then they scored a last-minute winner. So that was it, and then the very next game we played Manchester City, went 1-0 up again, and they come from behind and won that 2-1 as well. And that was really sort of where it started. The downfall happened. We picked up a few results after that against the teams you expect us to win. West Brom at home and Palace at home, and then we went to Bournemouth and went 3-0 down.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then got it back to 3-3. But still, against Bournemouth, a team that had only been in the top division, it was their second season in the top division. You don't really expect that to happen to a club. But Arsenal 3-0 down against a team that they're expected to beat.
Try losing 4-3 to them.
Well, that's another one.
It was 3-1 up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, Bournemouth can do that, as we can see, but it was another missed opportunity to go 3-0 down. I know we got a point in the end, but like I say, it's a missed opportunity. And then, after that, we had some decent results in the cup competitions, and then we go at the end of January and lose against Watford at home.
Was that January?
31st of January. We lost to Watford at home, so that was another. And then it was just a story of the second half of the season. We were just so inconsistent. I mean, next game after that, obviously going into it was Chelsea away, which you don't really fancy on the best of days. But going into that on the back of a home defeat against Watford doesn't bode well. So again, obviously that happened. Then we went and beat Hull, but then the infamous Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
That pretty just destroyed us, and then
Although you were in that till half time.
and then we got the sending off, and then we just fell apart. Which we've lost our best defender, and we're down to 10 men against a club like Bayern Munich. But to lose 5-1 at home, it's disgraceful, really. So, and then the rest of the season. I mean, we'd obviously done okay in the cup competition. I know we didn't really. Had 2 non-league clubs in the FA Cup getting us through. Another loss against West Brom, which you wouldn't have really expected.
It was dreadful again that day.
Yeah, and then after that, go into a game against Manchester City, and it's great. I know what's coming here. Scraped a 2-2 draw out of that. Didn't expect that. It didn't really deserve that at all. And then another 3-0 against Palace. Another bad result. But really after that, we had a couple of results. Lost against Tottenham, as didn't let me forget over the rest of the season. But actually, after that, we didn't actually lose a game for the rest of the season. But it's too late. We lost too many games. We lost 9 games.
Lost 9.
Nine games.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, I think we only drew about 5. But even if we change some of those losses into draws, it might have been a little bit better. But yeah, we lost. We won plenty of games, but we lost too many, and that was our downfall at the end. And we, like I said, we went on a run at the end of the season as like we always do.
And that's normally enough to get you in.
Yeah, and like Neil said earlier, we actually got was it 3 more points?
4 more.
4 more points than we did last season, and last season we finished second. And this season obviously it wasn't even enough to get us in the Champions League. And but it's just really it's our own fault because all the other teams have obviously got better over the season and got more points, and we're lagging behind. And before we can count on ourselves getting a late run and squeezing in, but because everyone's got better, it's not been enough and just not good enough really. I mean, at the end of the season, we did win a cup, which we won the FA Cup, which was a good way to finish the season. So it was at least we had something to cheer for the season. But really, the league campaign was just not good enough.
So I heard a debate.
Pick the bones out of that.
Yeah, there you go.
I heard a debate on the radio the other day that said about whether or not Arsenal were regressing because they finished outside the top 4 for the first time, but still won a cup.
Yeah.
Now some fans were coming on and saying that yes, there's a clear regression. Obviously, Wenger needs to go, but then you still had a core of Arsenal fans calling up and saying, "Well, look, we won a cup and we finished outside the top 4 by a couple of points, and we've not done that in 20 years. It's only natural that occasionally you're going to have a drop off and have to start again." So, I mean, there's a lot of talk about panic at Arsenal, but you've just said yourself that it was more points than last season, and all the big sides seemed to struggle last season. Mm-hmm. But are things as bad as they seem? Because I mean, obviously, there's a toxic atmosphere, is the phrase being used for the Emirates at the moment, and my concern for Arsenal, trying to be neutral about it, is that if next season starts badly, so you only get 2 wins out the first 6 games or something like that, Wenger's immediately on the back foot.
Yep. Unfortunately, it will be like that. I mean, I thought that it was time for Wenger to go, and I thought that obviously he's won the FA Cup. It's a good way to go out. He's not, he might have had not a very good season in the league, but he's gone out in a trophy, and it's now obviously made Arsenal the most successful club in FA Cup history, and Arsene Wenger's the most successful manager.
He won 7 cups himself.
Yeah. So you can't argue that, but I think something needs to change because, like you say, this season is the first season we've finished outside the top 4 in the Champions League, but. Okay, we're getting the Champions League every season, but there's no progression. We're getting to the same stage of the Champions League every season when we're in it, and then just getting well beaten.
And every year, kind of being in the league title race, it seems till Christmas, and then having that 2-month period where you just drop off.
Yeah, we should, like I say, we should be our experience in the Champions League. We should be getting better. We should be we should be picking up results against teams that we may have just been out for previous seasons. And the league, we should be, like I say, we should be progressing in that, but there isn't any progression.
I think, sorry Neil, but I think there's lots of reasons that you could point fingers at Wenger and criticise things he should or shouldn't have done, perhaps bringing in certain players, spending money, fancying to want to spend money. But the way that Arsenal are, and you touched on the fact that they lost a lot of games, won a lot of games, with not many draws.
Yeah.
Right? Now, generally a draw only occurs if the 2 sides are well matched, or if one side snatches something late on or something, right? I wonder whether it's just another embodiment of the fact that Arsenal's players are big time Charlies. So they either turn up or they don't.
Well, that's it.
Because the handful of draws suggests to me that they're rarely kind of balanced in a game. They either turn up and perform or they just switch off. And obviously
Either have a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10.
yes,
Yeah, there's no medium.
Palace,
no six.
No happy medium, is there?
You've got Palace, like you say.
Yeah.
You had the West Brom game, both dreadful. Well, both away, to be fair.
Yeah.
But both dreadful performances. That Watford game at the Emirates was the big surprise to me because I think you'd just beaten Southampton 5-0.
Yeah, in the cup. Yeah.
So to turn up at a very strange performance, you wonder what a team that you expect to be challenging for the top 4 at least as a minimum. It's just very strange. So you can question Wenger, and I think we touched on this earlier in the season. But surely it must be more looking at the players who haven't got the mentality to pull their socks up when games aren't the games that they want to play in. So obviously you didn't touch on it in your chat, but Ozil and Sanchez, both in the last year of their contracts.
Yep.
Sanchez is key to Arsenal because he's the only player that seems to turn up most weeks, even if he's got the ump.
Yeah, you mentioned that West Brom game. Obviously, he was basically, by far Arsenal's best player.
And he snatched points for you this season that you wouldn't have got in most other cases. So there's a case for keeping him. But Ozil, conversely, although in previous seasons he had a shed load of assists, he is one that you can pick on and say, in games where you don't fancy it, or you feel you're being marked out the game or getting unfair treatment, you give up, you shrug your shoulders and you plod about.
Yep.
I think, in a way, it's actually okay to have a player like that, but what you need is enough players who aren't like that. So, for example, when Man United signed Dimitar Berbatov, Dimitar Berbatov, sublime footballer, generally seemed to, had the odd good performance against a good side, but generally seemed to just score a shitload of goals against the Drek. But that's fine, because United have got enough players to compensate for that. They know that he'll play his part, he'll come in, he'll get a run of games, and then they'll play someone like Arsenal away, and Ferguson change the system, have enough players. But I'm not sure Arsenal... My point would be, if I was Arsene Wenger, I'd want to keep Ozil, and I'd just want to play him against the bottom 12. And then he can have the odd appearance here and then.
But he's not going to accept that, is he?
Well,
Never playing in the big games.
I guess not, but then you've made the point that he doesn't show up in them. So Wenger's argument is pure. Is say, well, I'll give you a chance in the odd game, perform for me, and you get more of those games. That's what I'd be saying.
And yet he wants reportedly a new £300,000 contract to stay.
Yeah, I mean, with Ozil's a difficult one because I like him. I like him as a player. He is a good player, but he is a luxury player. If things are not going well for the team, he'll just be anonymous. But if we're playing well, he will have a good game.
Yeah, because he enjoys it and he gets.
Yeah,
he's sort of the opposite of Sanchez, isn't he?
Yeah.
So you always notice Sanchez whether Arsenal are playing well or not.
So, I mean, if you zipped through the Arsenal 11 general starting 11 very quickly, let's look at the mentality in the side. Who is there? You've got Cech, loads of experience, lots of trophies that he's won down the years. Heading towards probably the end of his career. There's obviously a decline there, I think.
I think he's got probably only a couple, maybe 2 years left in him.
He's not the keeper he was perhaps 5 years ago.
No.
So then you go into your back line. Koscielny, you've mentioned, is key.
Yep.
Really good defender.
The only thing with Koscielny, he's got a chronic Achilles problem that they have to manage.
But mentally, he's always going to fight for you, isn't he?
He's by far our best defender.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the best defenders in the league. Personally, I think he's a bit underrated.
Mertesacker, really good FA Cup final.
Well, Mertesacker, I think he's good for his experience. He reads the game well, but he's not someone that could play all season because he's just got no pace. He get found out. I mean,
when you're looking to step up and dominate games, you can so easily get caught. Because,
FA Cup
like
final.
You say, it turns like an oil tanker.
He does. FA Cup final. He had a fantastic game. Him and Holding. I mean,
you can imagine him sort of because it was. I say because I've been in America, didn't see the cup final, but I can imagine because it was you're playing a big opponent. It's almost like a backs against the wall kind of thing.
Yeah.
You come into his element in that.
Arsenal
game.
turned up and were on top from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody played their game. I mean, when the teams were announced for that game, and I saw our centre back three were Rob Holding, obviously promising player but young, Per Mertesacker, who obviously for all the experience he's got, really
legs.
Legs, really slow, and had not started the game all season. And the other centre back was Nacho Monreal, who's a left back.
I mean, I thought, as did every other pundit you could think of, I thought Chelsea would turn you over.
Yeah,
They'd have too much.
thought it was.
But it was one of those games again where
yeah.
Arsenal turned up.
We
because
started
they
well,
wanted
and
it.
we started well, and we kept on playing well.
This
But
is
really-
why.
I sort of wonder. I mean, I only looked at the result, but you almost wonder if Arsenal had got fourth, would they have lost the cup final? It feels like they're that sort of team.
Yeah.
At the moment, so they finished fifth, but they were in good form. So
Well, on a pod earlier in the season, I said very quickly, we went through Arsenal and I said, is the Arsenal team as good as everyone thinks it is? And we went through the squad and I said, is he actually that good? We looked at people like Coquelin, we looked at people like El Nene, we looked at Giroud, and we said, is the Arsenal squad actually as good as everyone keeps saying it is? Should they really be fighting for the title? But then they surprise you because they can turn Chelsea over, and suddenly you think, well, they have got something about them, but only when they fancy it.
Well, it didn't. I mean, it surprised me in the fact that I didn't expect us to win the FA Cup final, but it didn't surprise me in one bit that we did, because we can do that in a one-off game.
yeah, you
But-
beat United a few weeks back, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you somebody else, City, obviously,
Yeah.
in the semi-final.
But then Arsenal's players are defrauding the fans every week.
Well, we just lack consistency. We've got no consistency.
Because
Well,
I
they
think that's a
can do it.
strong thing.
They can do it, and I would
But-
argue that they'll say they choose not to, but if they turn up on the day and think, well, do you know what, I'm going to plod about today, we should get a win, I'm not going to sort of put in the extra effort, I don't think that's good enough. It's like with the Leicester players. Earlier in the season when they were shocking, and then Ranieri leaves, Shakespeare steps up, and suddenly Leicester finish top 10, I think, and look a lot more like they did last year. And I think, obviously, it didn't cost Wenger his job, but Arsenal, in the way they perform, to me, it makes me think of Leicester, because basically they turn up when they fancy it, and I don't think that's fair on the fans, because the fans would turn up to most games and think, we should beat West Brom, we should beat Watford.
I think that, I mean, I've said this before, and it's probably not going to be the last time I say it. Arsenal's problem is mentality.
Yeah.
I think if they have one bad result, that mentality was, oh no, we've lost the game, and everyone's head goes down, and then that sticks there for a few weeks.
We said obviously about Spurs and Liverpool sort of picking themselves back up to a degree.
Yeah, I think
that's more
Arsenal
difficult
find that
for
hard.
Arsenal.
Yeah, they find it hard to do it.
I think there is a bit of a Wenger thing here, right? Because, I mean, and I know we're straying into realms of transfer gossip, but there's a lot of talk that Oxlade-Chamberlain wants to leave. And the main reason that he seems to want to leave is because he wants to play in the middle, but Wenger won't play him there. And the Arsenal fans that I've heard seem to think that he does well in the middle.
In the middle where?
In the middle midfield.
Midfield.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he paid. When we signed him,
Well-
he was playing there for Southampton, and obviously because he's very quick. We've been playing him out on the wing.
I was going to say, isn't he considered a pacey winger? Generally.
I think to be honest, I mean, I know there's talk of us signing him. When I've looked at him, I've always thought that he could fill in a number of holes in a squad. So I think obviously he can play wide. Like
left back.
Yeah.
I think he could. I'm not saying he'd be a brilliant solution, but I think you could stick him there for a game or two.
Well, he pretty much did play it in the cup final, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he's playing left wing back.
Yeah.
So
And I suppose that's the other thing is was slightly tangenting, but I mean that 3-5-2, like you said, you picked up form at the end of the season.
Well,
so
it's
is he
kind
gonna
of
stick with it.
Well, that's the thing.
I suppose it depends on the players you sign.
It'd be interesting, but I think you've got to stick with the first game of the season, because obviously Tottenham play that way, Chelsea play that way, and it has seemed to have worked for us. And for one player, I think it's benefited the most is Aaron Ramsey, because he is much better when he's in the centre. But if we've been playing our 4-3-3, it doesn't really work, because we need someone to sit there, and then you've got two players, sort of that kind of almost wide players. So when we end up playing him in just midfield, we'd have like a Coquelin or Xhaka playing in the centre, and then Ramsey would be sort of on the right hand side, and it just doesn't work.
So Ramsey scored his first goal of the season on the last day of the season,
and then he obviously scored in the cup final.
Yeah.
And he's good. He's good playing in the middle when he can just make those runs, and that obviously the 3-5-2 that we're playing at the moment. That I think it just works a lot better for him because he has a little bit more freedom because you can still play. Xhaka in the middle.
Yeah.
And then Ramsey alongside him, but Ramsey's not because you've got the wing backs. He hasn't got to go wide. He can stick more in the middle.
I've always, having watched him for Wales as well as Arsenal, he looks like a potentially devastating player in the centre.
Yeah,
like he could be, he's the sort of the Dele Alli type.
He's
where he
number
can
10,
link up with.
He was Arsenal's most dangerous player in the North London derby, from what I remember.
Yeah, I think it's key to certainly. I mean, I couldn't see him going anywhere, but I think it's key to have him as a cornerstone. Whatever happens with your likes of your Sanchez's and your Ozils, I think it's key to have players like him and build around him.
Well, I think we've got to keep hold of players. I know obviously Chambers says he wants to play in the centre, but this new formation will suit him because he can go up and down the wing and and it probably suit Bellerin more as well because he's going forward. He's probably better going forward.
He's a quasi right winger, really.
Yeah,
isn't he?
probably signed him as a right winger and we turned him into a defender. But obviously, his pace can get him out of trouble.
I think Arsenal, because of dropping out the Champions League, I don't know how seriously they'll take the Europa League. They're going to win it.
I think it could be a refreshing thing for them. I think
they'll run the title close next year.
It depends on signings.
Yeah, it depends. It depends who we get in. I mean, I think what I think that the biggest issue is going to be is that obviously a lot of fans are anti-Wenger, and now Wenger's signed the new deal. So whether they like it or not, if they're
he's going nowhere.
Yeah, if they're fans, if people are fans of Arsenal, they've just got to get behind the team. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are going to be people first game of the season, Wenger out, banners and stuff like that. But that's going to affect what's happening on the pitch. So for us to become,
should it?
Well,
yeah, but it will
because all people are going to hear is booing and
I know
and
players always go, I block it out, it doesn't affect me. I never believe that.
Well, I always think if Arsenal score early, it doesn't matter what else is going on, Arsenal will be on top. And if Arsenal score first, generally they steamroll the teams because they're too good when they're confident. The trouble is, too often that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. I think the danger is like you said about it earlier with the toxic thing, and someone on Twitter made a comparison of Brendan Rodgers when he came off the back of a poor season. We ended up getting thrashed 6-1 by Stoke. Everyone expected him to be sacked, and he wasn't. But it was the same thing where you thought, okay, I'm happy to go with this. The club's stuck by him, but it was always in the back of your mind that the first bad result, things are going to go nasty.
Yeah. It would turn quickly.
And that would be my fear at Arsenal. But equally, having said that, you're right to say, Dan, that if they get off to a flyer, I mean, it could be a really good season for them. But like you said, teams have flourished outside of Europe.
It's a results business at the end of the day, isn't it? Like I say, if we, it's difficult because if we start the season, we go 10 games unbeaten, we win our first 10 games. I think a lot of fans will be like, okay, and then
you were top at Christmas this year.
Well, yeah, we're top of Christmas a lot of years,
but
we're just not top at the end of the season ever.
That's the madness of it, though, isn't it? Like you said, did really well until those Everton and City games. It just seemed to drain them.
Well, it just seems like we get to, like I say, we get to the stage where we get to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, get knocked out. That really affects us, and then our league season falls apart. Go out of cup competitions. I mean, obviously we didn't. This year because.
But you're not going to overhaul the whole squad, are you either? So
no, we do need. I still think that two players. Two players we need. We still need a top class centre half. I think Koscielny, obviously, if he can stay fit. Koscielny's still there. I think Mustafi will come good, but I think we need another world class centre back to be along through. If we play the same formation, we need someone along to play alongside.
Maybe Arsenal. I would say world class. Maybe Arsenal look at Van Dijk as well.
Well,
A lot of talk of Van Dijk.
Join the club.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's another one. Yeah, and then the other thing, well, we've been screaming out for the years. I know Sanchez has scored a lot of goals this season, but doesn't play. Obviously, he's not an out striker. Giroud has scored some goals, but I think you need somebody that's going to get you 25, 30 goals a season. You need a Harry Kane. We need a Harry Kane.
I think you
Really.
need a Sturridge. I really hope we don't sell him to you, but I think
see that.
someone like him would be ideal. I mean, injury permitting, obviously.
Yeah.
If he played down the middle, you say about them needing that. If he played down the middle, could Danny Welbeck not fulfil that role? Because he always seems dangerous to me.
I don't think he's prolific enough for me.
Yeah, that's my problem. I think Danny Welbeck could be the answer, but he doesn't score enough goals.
I think he'll get you 10, 15.
Theo
and
Walcott will be
it's like
silently seething somewhere.
Yeah.
Giroud will get you 10, 15. Walcott might get you 10. Oxlade-Chamberlain perhaps pushing it would get a 10. So you like you say, you probably want a 20, 25
Well, yeah.
to go alongside Sanchez.
That's the thing. I think Welbeck could possibly do it, but he's just come back. He's come back from 2 bad injuries. If he could go through a whole season and not get injured, you never know. You never know, don't you? If he can get some confidence back, but yeah, I think we need to get an out and out striker that's like a Harry Kane, a Lukaku,
Who'd have thought this
a
time
Benzema.
around, though?
I know.
He's
I know.
loving it.
A couple of years ago, when
Every
you
second of
snapped
it.
your legs off for Thierry Henry.
I know. Unfortunately,
Yeah, but
we've had no
anyone
one
would.
else like him since.
Anyone would.
So yeah, I think, yeah, I think it's just going to be interesting next season. I think we can't do anything about now the fact that Wenger's going to stay for another 2 years. And I think I think all the fans have just got to get behind the team now. But I think it's just going to be an interesting summer. But no Champions League. Are we going to be able to attract the best players?
Because you've been in it so recently, it would tend to. I think when you fall out for a number of years, that's when the problems happen.
But
I wouldn't expect Arsenal to have. You don't know, obviously. I wouldn't expect them to have immediate problems this summer.
But I suppose you could also say, as well, you obviously said about it earlier. There's a lot of players now that will just want to play for a manager.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of players out there and just think, Arsene Wenger, he's been a manager for this amount of time. He's got a good track record, bringing young players through and stuff. But yeah, so
I
there
think
could be
particularly
players.
young Frenchmen. So
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe there's something in the Mbappe thing. I think he'll go to Madrid, but
We'll save that for the transfer show.
Well, we tried. I think. Well, we tried to sign him last time, and Wenger went to his house, didn't he? And he decided to.
I don't know.
Yeah, apparently Wenger went to his house and just said, "Look, we want to sign you." But he just. I think in bed with the fact, obviously, he was 16, 17, and he said, "I just want to, just trying to establish myself first of all." And obviously, he's come in this season, and he's really done that. And unfortunately, now his
big name now.
and his value has gone sky
Albert
high.
Wang's
I reckon
available.
what
isn't it?
happened actually is they just made him a crap cup of tea or something, Wenger, or put out some shit cakes, and he went, "No, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I'm not having that."
It'd be interesting to see what it would take for Wenger to get the job, though, because if Arsenal were 5th, 6th for Christmas,
Yeah.
fans again
It'll be difficult,
fed
wouldn't
up
it?
of another year.
Yeah.
Just wonder what it would take, because he seems to have a very secure position
Yeah.
in the club.
I mean, signings wise, I mean, there seems to be one that has been agreed from the left back or wing back from Schalke, Sead Kalasanic.
Has that gone through?
No, well, there was talk that apparently he was going to sign for us when his contract ends on the 1st of July, so we'll wait for the 1st of July.
yeah.
Everybody else is doing business.
But whether or not.
Fine. It's the 3rd of June.
I know, but
People don't need to worry about this. The Twitter is going mad every time somebody, because you've signed that set where you pretty much signed that Sessignon, haven't you, that we were looking for.
Well, allegedly.
And everyone's gone mental over
But the
that.
thing is-
It's the 3rd of June,
I know,
people.
you don't like. It's all this stuff going through. There's obviously talk of that. That we've agreed a deal to sign that young Nigerian who's top scorer in the Belgium league.
Onayuku or something like that.
Omri Onayuku, who's 19. Apparently got a 6.8 million buyout clause. Very Arsenal. There we go. But is he the answer? You don't know. But I see 19 years of age and scored 24 goals in the top division in Belgium. It's obviously something to him, but again, that's just rumours. We'll see. Until they're on the club website holding the shirt, you don't believe anything.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up Arsenal. And in fact, that wraps up everything. I think we've covered all our clubs. We were planning to do a more general Premier League review, but we've run out of time, so we'll save that for another show. During the summer, we are looking to do transfer rumour shows and possibly stuff on topics that hot topics about the game. So, but we'll also include our general Premier League review. So that'll be coming up. Look out for that. But thanks very much, gents. It's been a pleasure to discuss our relative seasons.
Yeah, thank you for the season in general, listeners.
Yes, thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Look out for our pods during the summer, and this has been this. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say actually before I go, because I forgot to say it during the review, happy birthday to Liverpool, because it's our 125th birthday today. So happy birthday, lads. He caused me a lot of good times as well as along with some of the pain, so got to give them a shout out on their birthday. Many happy returns. And on that note, gents,
Ridiculous.
what's wrong with celebrating that? You were talking about a ground for 5 minutes earlier, which I've got nothing against, by the way.
Go and buy a cake now.
I'm gonna go and buy a cake and blow out candles. Happy birthday, lads! And
You saying go to stadium? You could do a cake of White Hart Lane, and then obviously when you blow out the candles, the stadium just falls down.
I
Would
like
have been
it.
cheaper.
It would be.
Right, enough of this nonsense. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Wow, 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 wow.